Well, happy Pride, everyone. I'm California Assemblymember Evan Low, chair of the California LGBT Legislative Caucus, and welcome to the episode of The Lowdown with yours truly, Evan Low. We are officially celebrating Pride Month, and today we are joined by our very special guest, Joel Kim Booster. Joel, thank you so very much for joining today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Well, just by a little bit of a background for those who may not know about you, well, your team provided us a little bio, but we look forward to some of your comedy. But Joel is also a writer and actor in Los Angeles, and he cares deeply about cats. This is what your team gave to us. Television, public feuds. I'm actually laughing as I'm reading this. Public feuds, and in his words, not necessarily mine, other useless shit. He is co-host of the excellent podcast Urgent Care, and he is also hosting the amazing Joy Fuck Club interview series on 88 Rising on Sirius XM. As you may have also seen Joel, he's starred in NBC's Sunnyside and has also written for shows such as Big Mouth, The Other Two, and Billy on the Street. And of course, you can see him on the Late Show with James Corden and his guest appearance, as well as Conan and Netflix. So if you're looking to Netflix and chill, you can find Joel as well too if you're not going to see him in person. His latest comedy has also been on Comedy Central and is now streaming on Paramount Plus, and you absolutely need to check it out. So having all said that with a mouthful, happy Pride, Joel.
Happy Pride, Evan. How's it going?
Well, it's good to be here and be able to chat with you. And I know that we are very much dying to see each other in person. But as you know, here in California, this was our reopening day, our reopening week. What'd you do to celebrate?
I went out with a couple of friends on Tuesday. We just like stood in a bar and mingled and met strangers and saw a bunch of people I forgot I hated, which was really exciting. It's a rite of passage here in LA. It was a lot of fun. I have to say, people were losing their goddamn minds, though. I will say, like, somebody offered me a Molly, and I was like, "It's Tuesday. What are you doing? Get out of here."
Joel, I think people are just making up for lost time.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we try to keep these chats very fun and informative, but if there's anything specifically you have to get off your chest that you want to just share with viewers, anything specifically?
No, I mean, let's get into it. Let's jump into it.
Well, good enough for me. Well, we're here in Pride Month, and as you know, we officially recognize this month as Pride by the state of California. And I saw in a recent tweet from you after someone asked you to help sum up Pride, and I know that we're going to help post that as well with the tweet that you posted about as to summing up Pride by you. So I'm going to ask you a different question. Having grown up in Illinois and or the Midwest, what would you say is the major difference with respect to Pride here in California and growing up?
I mean, Pride here in California is, I think, a little bit more, it's less scary. The thing is like, I grew up right outside of Chicago, and I remember like my earliest memories of Pride were like sneaking to Chicago to see the parade as like a 16-year-old freshly out kid with my friends. And like, so like my memories of Pride in the Midwest are all like sort of cloaked in this like really exciting feeling, and deep down, like I was doing something sort of not wrong, but I was like, I was sneaking around and like, I felt like really excited, but really scared at the same time. And now being here in California as an adult, I mean, it just feels almost like old hat. Like I have to be reminded that like I was once that kid who had to sneak to Pride and was scared that his parents would find out. And now I get to go and live my life freely, openly at the parties with my friends, and just try and remember like all the things that we have that I've taken for granted, at being out for half my life now.
And so, given that experience that you feel comfortable now, what do you think it is like for the Gen Z, younger generations? Does that stigma still exist in the Midwest?
I think there are definitely parts of the country where the stigma it still exists and is still really strong. I mean, I travel, I tour all over the country doing stand up, and I meet people all the time who, probably in parts of the country where pride is not as big a deal here as it is in LA, who still feel that sort of like need for pride. I think it's really easy to be cynical about pride now because you see like all the corporations that are jumping in and waving our flag and like trying to cash in on our month basically, and try and get our rainbow dollars. And it's really easy to be like, oh, like, do we even need pride anymore? And then you go to places like in the Midwest or the South, or a little bit more conservative areas of the country, and it is a reminder for me that like pride is still vital. Pride is still a really tough thing for some people to be able to celebrate, and that's a really important reminder for me.
Yeah, I've watched much of your stand-up and hearing about your personal experiences too, and very much related to it as well as a gay Asian American. And of course, we just came up after the month of May as Asian Pacific Islander Pride Month, as well as we head into June. And so the intersectionality is so important. And of course, when I go knock on doors or talk to people, they might not know that I'm openly LGBT. We are certainly openly Asian Pacific Islander. And so given the comfort you talk about that oftentimes you knew that you were gay before you were Asian. Do you still feel like that struggles exists for younger generations?
No, I mean, my situation was really unique because I was adopted. My parents were white. And so that's why when I say like I knew I was gay before I knew I was Asian, was like I had a really very like unique experience of being Asian to a lot of people who grew up in Asian families and who grew up culturally Asian, And so like for me, like I knew I was different really early on in a very specific way. Like I was also homeschooled. So like I wasn't around other kids. I didn't think it was weird that I didn't look like my family, And so like it wasn't until I was a little bit older that I sort of realized that like, oh, I'm different on the outside as well as the inside too. And so like that was my personal struggle. I don't know. I'm sure that I know that for a fact that there are other Asian adoptees who have like similar sort of dysphoria that occurs early in life. I've talked to them and I speak to that experience a lot, and like people tell me that they relate to it. But I don't know if it's necessarily, it's definitely not something I struggle with now. And it's definitely, I think it's a very case by case, very unique situation to me.
Yeah, well, I think, I'll say that it's quite beautiful to see you in action, truly, to see the level of confidence, but also speaking truths and using comedy to connect with people. But what do you think we changed in your life with respect to understanding your own identity or being comfortable with who you are, especially in an environment in which, the number of laws in multiple states are attacking members of the LGBTQ community, and you put that upon that of the Asian Pacific Islander hate. What do you think gave you that sense of, okay, was there a moment in time, or is it more of a transition?
I mean, it's definitely it's an ongoing process of self-acceptance and strength. Like I think like especially for me as a performer and somebody who is representing the community sort of begrudgingly, like I wish that I could just be a comedian and just go on stage and make people laugh and not have to think about the responsibility that comes with being one of the few openly gay Asian like entertainers out there. And so I think like I feel that responsibility, and it's something that I'm like constantly, that is constantly evolving. But like early in my career, I was really sort of self-deprecating about myself and my race. And I think like, I was performing for white audiences. And so in my mind, I sort of developed material that I felt would ingratiate me to white audiences. And it wasn't until I moved to New York and started performing for more diverse audiences and really taking a look at what I was doing and being like, no, I need to perform for myself first, and also sort of represent the people that I look like as well. And so like I really turned a corner early in my career, thank God, and really came into my power as an Asian person and said like, no, it's really important to me that when I go out on stage, like I'm unapologetic about who I am, and I'm not apologizing for being different, and I want to display a certain level of strength and pride in not only my sexuality but also my race, and like not being a clown or ingratiating myself just to make white people comfortable or straight people.
Having individuals like yourself on the wider platform, changing hearts and minds through comedy and connecting with people in different ways. Of course, me and Asian Pacific Islanders, specifically in politics, and members of the LGBT community, we have our limitations because politics is seen as icky, dirty. But when you talk, when we see Bowen on television, when we see Margaret and so many others, a select few, I mean, I should just think about it on top of my head. What do we need to do to help support the environment and also the market so that we can help amplify your success?
I mean, it's about like going out there and supporting, like come to the shows, buy the tickets, watch, put your eyes on our stuff, like put your dollars, towards the stuff that you want to see more of, because that's the problem with this industry, is that there's a real lack of imagination, quite honestly, in the people that are making decisions. They can only see what's already been done. And so there's not a lot of forward focus. And like, for me and for Bowen and for Margaret, especially, like all the people that are coming up behind us, it is such a struggle to get people to take us seriously as entertainers, and to get us to take us serious enough to give us the platforms that we've been given, And so I think, like, and I also want to point out, like, too, like, whenever, some of my biggest critics are gay and or Asian and or both, they don't enjoy my work, and that's totally fine. And what I always say to them is that there are so many other people out there to support. Like, don't waste your energy on me. Find the people that do represent you and lift them up and signal boost the shit out of them, and make sure that they're, you're finding the representation out there. It exists.
Yeah, well, I think we just have to lead by example. So thank you, because you were changing hearts and minds of others who can see themselves in the future for these non-traditional occupations. I think that's especially as we are tackling the Stopping Asian Pacific Islander Hate, to uplift our communities, and of course the intersectionality, as we're talking in the lens of the LGBT community as well, and for Asian Pacific Islanders. How about something a little bit more fun?
Okay.
The team's going to put up, I think, a tweet that you had too. And it's about you and the team, and you just posted on your social media about PV, Puerto Vallarta, recently. And I just want to ask a simple question. So how do I get an invite and talk about maybe, a few friends of mine also joining in that, that small little gathering?
Well, I will say that, like, everybody and anybody is welcome. I think, like, in my friend group, it's about, I think I got in a little bit of trouble because of, like, this perception about me that I'm like self-selecting, like, really hot guys in my friend group. And I don't think that's what brought us together. I mean, I think, like, if you look at the photo, like, our diversity brought us together, but I also think, like, there's a certain level of, like, kindness and, like, joy that you have to have. Like, I just think that for so long in my life, like, I was so worried about, like, having gay friends, and the judgment within the gay community, and the sort of discrimination that happens within the gay community. And for me and for us, and, like, what isn't seen in that photo is all the gassing up that we do of each other, and the support and the uplifting that we do for each other. And I think that, like, for me, that's the vibe you have to have. It's not about what you look like. It's not about anything like that. It is about, like, what is your energy that you're bringing to this group? Are you lifting up people? Are you, like, inviting other people in? Like, that's the big point. That's, like, the big thing about at least the people that in now in my mid 30s, like, that's how I'm self-selecting my friends, is like, I just don't have time for negativity.
I mean, but you talk about that frequently, just being authentic and being unapologetic, and especially in the month of June, to celebrate diversity. And that also comes with a wide variety of different perspectives that we all have, and because our community is very diverse.
Yeah.
Well, I saw that you also did an interview recently in Glamour, and the piece was so insightful. So I'd really encourage individuals to take a look at it. But in there, you said something that really struck out to me. And I think you were quoted by saying something to the effect of, I didn't feel like I had close Asian friends until I had a lot of gay Asian friends. What did you mean by that? What's the context behind that?
I mean, I think that for me, it was just the community that I found in New York was specifically like, there's a party called Bubble Tea that I would go to. And like, it was really like, I mean, Bowen was a big part of that. And like, for me, like, it was like who I was connecting with culturally. Like, it really was about shared experience. And I think like a lot of that has to do with the discrimination that like gay Asian men face within our community, and like connecting over that and connecting over that like shared trauma that we all shared of like sort of growing up in the age of no fats, no femmes, no Asians, and like understanding how harmful that can be to not only your self-esteem but just your spirit. And like for me, like, you know, it's I grew up in an all-white community. Basically, I didn't meet another Korean person until I was 13 years old. And so, and in Chicago, you know, it is a fairly segregated city, fairly white city. And so it wasn't until I moved to New York and I started like mixing and finding my people there that I really like connected for the first time with other Asian people. And I think it was because of the queer experience sort of layered on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, specifically for those who may not be as familiar, it's so well known culturally, especially within the LGBT community, to find our voice as Asian Pacific Islanders. And you referenced it in terms of the engagement and interactions that we have with each other. And I hope that we can change that. And oftentimes, again, during the Stopping Asian Pacific Islander Hate, the conversation to uplift our communities in a wide variety of different ways. But let us not lose sight of that we as LGBT community members must help uplift all communities, frankly, and that we must get rid of even that type of stigma that you referenced earlier. But even along those lines of racism towards the Asian Pacific Islander community, and especially as you integrate that in terms of your comedy, I'm curious, how have you processed the spike in attacks towards the Asian Pacific Islander community in the recent years?
You know, I think that it's sort of a culmination of years and years and years and years of different sort of ideas and attitudes about Asian Americans. I think it stems from this attitude that we're not American, you know, even though many of us have been here, myself included, my entire life. And I think it stems from this idea, like the eternal foreigner sort of idea is like a big part of that. And I think like, for me, like it is like little tiny systemic attitudes about Asian Americans that have led to this moment, you know? And I think like we have been such a silent community about like those struggles. And I think that our silence has sort of allowed it to not allowed it, but I think like we need to start speaking up more for ourselves. I think we have, as a community, need to start, you know, it starts at like the joke level even, you know, like we need to like start at the microaggressions so that they do not build into macroaggressions basically. And I think like as a community, we've been sort of taught to be like, oh, it's okay, it's just a joke, it's just a joke, it's just an attitude, it's just this, it's just that. But all of those things build up into these to what we're seeing today. And I think like it's a really important thing for us to ask, you know, of other communities to say like, hey, like, you know, our struggle is obviously very different from many other struggles in going on for other marginalized communities in this country, but let's ask each other to uplift each other, you know? I think that's like a big.
Yeah, well, especially, I mean, I take that take that to heart specifically too, just about our own identity, especially during the month of March, during Women's History Month, then that we as Asian Pacific Islanders need to participate and be part of that. We need to also be part of Black Lives Matter. We need to be part of all different community groups as well too, because we find that we're stronger together. But I'll just even to say that even for me, I went to the gym the other day and I saw some people gawking at me, and I was just wondering, like, is it like the Asian hate stuff again? And I realized that I was the only one at the gym wearing a mask still. And I was just pondering to myself, okay, is I'm at a mask, and is there another layer to this too, that I'm Asian and also wearing a mask? And so it's these sensitivities that maybe not everyone gets a chance to think about, but it's a reality that we're dealt with each and every day.
Yeah.
What's it been like for you wearing a mask? Has wearing the mask during the pandemic given you any different sense of privacy? Has it changed your life? And are you still wearing a mask when you're going out?
It depends on where I'm going, honestly, and it depends on the context of like whether or not I'm wearing a mask or not. But I like, it didn't really change my life that much. I'm a pretty anonymous person. I'm not famous, Evan, and so it didn't.
Infamous. You're infamous.
Infamous, yeah. It didn't really change much for me, except it did give me, it did hide some breakouts, maybe, which was nice. But other than that, it really didn't change my day to day. I acclimated pretty quickly to the mask life.
Well, I think that a bunch of my friends, there's a circuit party, a gay party later on this month in San Francisco, and they're asking themselves, and like, hey, are you going to wear a mask? Are you going to wear a mask up? What will you plan on doing at your next circuit party? Are you going to wear a mask or not?
If it's no, probably not. I'm vaccinated, and I think like most of the parties I'm going to, everyone else is vaccinated too. So I think I'll probably go shirtless and maskless to the next party that I.
Well, you're going to get a bunch of people and your fans excited to be able to try to find you at the next party too.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll be there.
Well, we're going to move on then to just something we do really quickly as more of a fun time as we're running out of time. And it's a lightning round.
Oh,
and I know that our team spent hours coming up with some of the catchy titles for the segment and finding out the best what they can do. So this is a lightning round, and I'm just going to say a word or two. And if you could just respond with the first thing that comes to mind. So I'm going to say a word, and you just respond with the first thing that comes to mind. Not too much thought, but just immediately. Okay. Ready? All right. Favorite meal?
Spaghetti.
Childhood crush?
Fucking Quantum Leap guy. What's his name? Scott Bakula.
Your generation's coming out. Pet peeve?
Being rude to service employees.
Oh, that's a good one, especially right now.
Yeah.
As we come back. Caitlyn Jenner?
Moron.
Social media?
Toxic.
Cancel culture?
Overhyped.
Performing?
Energizing.
Future?
Scary.
And finally, pride?
Vital.
Awesome. Joel, I hope that I get a chance to see you in person and that we can all do our respective parts to uplift each other. Of course, being gay and Asian and so much more, we need to be sure that we are interconnected and investing in each other's shared success. So I appreciate all that you do. And while you might not hear from many fans, know that you are making an impact in our community.
Thank you.
Well, any final thoughts, Joel, as we celebrate Pride? We're halfway done with Pride. And any final thoughts for any viewers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I want to say like, and I sort of touched on this earlier, but it is like, like for a lot of people, I think Pride has become a party and a celebration. And I think that's amazing. And I think so many of us have spent half our lives, hiding and feeling ashamed of who we are. And there is an element that can be energizing and re-energizing about this moment, this month, this our ability to party through the trauma and the pain. But I also want to remind everyone that there are still members of our community that do not have access to the celebration yet. And so let the party energize you, recharge you, but remember that, Pride started as a riot. I know we hear it all the time. But remember why, and remember the members of our community who don't have access yet, that our trans brothers and sisters, our homeless, brothers and sisters, our, people who do not have access to healthcare in our community. All of those intersections are still suffering. And I think, despite how it might feel like we've won some kind of war because Chipotle is going pink, and for the month, it's not over. There's still a lot of fight left.
Dang, Joel, you're definitely woke. Have you ever thought about running for office?
No, couldn't do it.
Hey, man, I tell you, your work, I think, is harder.
Yeah.
I think your work is much harder. Well, we appreciate your visibility and staying true to yourselves. You're definitely an inspiration. And thank you so very much for being a guest on the Lowdown with Evan Low. So viewers, please be sure to follow Joel on Facebook. And his handle is I Hate Joel Kim. Again, that's I Hate Joel Kim on Twitter and Instagram. Joel, do you have any upcoming shows or events
if you're in Indiana, I'll be in Bloomington this weekend, Friday and Saturday night at the Comedy Attic. And other than that, I'll be in Nashville, July, I believe, 8th and 9th at Zany's in Nashville. And I'll be doing shows in New York all summer.
Oh, nice. Sweet. Well, let's be sure to support you as much as possible. Thanks again, Joel. Happy Pride to you.
Happy Pride, Evan.
Great. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.